everyone, and welcome to what is part 4 of our Fringe Preview podcast series. And today I'm joined by folk singer and storyteller Kirsty Law. Hello, Kirsty.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about Scotland Unsung, the show that you're bringing to the Fringe. Tell us all about it.
So, this is a brand new show that I've made for this year's Fringe, and I'm performing it at the Scottish Storytelling Centre. Storytelling is something that has crept its way slowly into my work. Story is something that has grabbed me about folk singing, and pulled me into that genre even further to do what I do today. And for years, I've worked with storytellers in storytelling shows. But this is my first one where I am the one fully telling the stories on my own. So, yeah, that it's exciting in that way. And then this show itself, Scotland Unsung, is I've given it the kind of subheading. It's a flight through the songlines of Scottish history, inspired by Virginia Woolf's Orlando. So I've created this character, Scotia, and this character travels throughout various songs and stories that I really, really love. And what I would love the audience to come out the show feeling is that they've maybe got more of a 3D sense of what songs and stories in the beautiful Scots tradition can be. And from my point of view, that is a space that we create for ourselves, safe spaces, places to express our emotions, sometimes tell our darkest stories and share our dark emotions, as well as where we share our joy and the nice bits and the slightly more marketable bits that people are probably aware of first.
And why did you want to put this show on? What inspired it, I guess, apart from Orlando? We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So, well, there is a sort of unique thing about the Fringe. As someone who, I live in Edinburgh, and as a performer, there's something that kind of in the back of my and somebody who likes to kind of drift into the more narrative side of my life as a folk singer. There is something in my mind which goes, well, if you already live in Edinburgh, you should really take advantage of the Fringe, because so many people have to stump up for accommodation and it's much more difficult. But you get this opportunity to have an audience that is like really big at the Fringe in terms of the number of performances you can do, and also such a varied audience and a very attentive audience, and from all different places across the world. So that feels like quite a unique opportunity at this time of year.
I think that uniqueness is right, because you can be telling these stories to people from Scotland who perhaps don't know them, but then you've also got these people from outside who won't know these either. And so you're giving a more complete picture of where they're visiting too.
Yeah, and it's definitely the Scots tradition side of things, rather than there's not I don't really have I'm not a Gaelic singer, or I'm from this part of the world, so it's definitely a sort of Scots tradition side of things. Excuse me. And but yeah, absolutely, there's an appetite from my point of view to just share some of what it is that I really love about the material that I work with all the time.
I'm interested in, you said you've moved more into the storytelling aspect. Was that kind of did that happen without you even realizing it, really? Because we know you as a singer of folk songs, and in a way, that's you telling stories already. So, what in your mind was the kind of shift?
Well, with every kind of song that I do, I seem to have about a PhD's worth of sort of background and story and reasons why I love it, and I always have a certain amount of storytelling at my gigs to lead into songs or lead out of songs. And if you do that for too long at a gig, people start looking at their watch. But if you write a storytelling show, well, then people give you the space for that. So I was always quite inclined in that direction. Um, excuse me. So yeah, I was always quite inclined in that direction to share the stories beyond the songs. And so that is kind of what this show does, is it places stories and songs next to each other, either pulling stories out of the songs themselves in a historical way, or contextualizing a song with another traditional story that make you look at the two of them in a slightly different light.
So, does that involve quite a lot of research on your part? You can,
Yes.
yeah, the smile on your face is like, that's my favorite bit.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite bits.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so lots of time listening to archives, and reading in books, and yeah, kind of accumulated a bit of a library of kind of Scottish history and Scottish songs, and uh, so yeah, there's quite a lot that I sort of have at my fingertips to draw on from that, and then there's it's been yeah, it's really I really love looking back at all of this old stuff, but then thinking about, well, how is this gonna ring out live in the Fringe in 2025, and and for me as a person delivering it
Yeah.
live in 2025, um, and what are the things that resonate with me in my emotions in real time, and how can I highlight that? Yeah.
And we should say, let people know where and when they can see it, because it's a
Yeah.
shorter run than other people might be doing.
Yeah, so it's the 20th to the 24th of August. So that's the Wednesday to the Sunday towards the end of the Fringe. And it's at the Scottish Storytelling Centre in the Netherbow Theatre.
Yeah,
And from 12 till 1 p.m.
and it's the perfect place really to do it, and for all sorts of reasons I think we can go into. But I'm recording one of these with Alan Bissett just recently, who's his show when Billy met Alistair is also on it, and we were both waxing lyrical about what a great space it
Mm.
is, a proper theatre space, which is not always the case, obviously, with the Fringe.
Yeah, I mean, I performed there. I performed there so much, and so I really feel like the Scottish Storytelling Centre is kind of my home venue, you
Yeah.
know. But I'm feeling particularly lucky to be able to get to perform there in the Fringe, because there are so many makeshift venues, and really creative theatre makers who manage to turn a wee dark damp room into into like something amazing, and I have to do very little work to do that because it's such a lovely space.
And in terms of staging, is it, what can audiences expect?
Very simple. Uh, so yeah, this might be a good moment to talk about how I decided to approach this with and taking inspiration from Orlando, because so yeah, for those who haven't read it or seen the film with Tilda Swinton,
Yeah.
Orlando was Virginia Woolf's fictional biography of a real person.
Yeah.
So it was about her lover Vita Sackville West, and Virginia Woolf's father was a biographer, and so she was well sort of versed in that format of writing. and kind of not hugely enamored by it for this particular project. And so she was she wanted to write a biography of her long-term lover, and felt like it needed to be bigger and more exciting, and that this person who was so wonderful couldn't be contained to one sort of just linear born, lived, died biography. And so Orlando is the name in the book of this character, who I think starts off in Elizabethan times, and is a man at the beginning, a young man at the beginning of the book, and kind of aristocratic. Anyway, throughout this biography, the character of Orlando grows and changes and moves through time and gender over the course of hundreds of years, and meets various different people and becomes different things, and eventually becomes a woman. And to Virginia Woolf's mind, this felt like a comprehensive biography of her lover.
Yeah.
And it felt like, I mean, that's a book that I hold very, very dear.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was sitting down, I knew I wanted to share all of these songs and these stories, and I wanted people to come away with a sense of Scots tradition, a sense of Scots culture. But how do you want to avoid being definitive about these things, because the exciting thing about it is that it evolves and changes and takes on new things, and then all of a sudden, and then just sort of hit me. I was like, oh, that's the perfect format for this. If I create this character that is this moving, evolving sense of Scots culture, it's this character Scotia, which is the old Latin name for Scotland, and sounds like it could maybe be a kind of unisex name. And so, yeah, this character Scotia starts off. The first place we find Scotia is as a young boy in Leith. So yeah, and then by the end, Scotia is kind of an older woman, up in the old town actually, but goes a few places first.
So it physically moves through the city as well as
and a few
I
ran through the country a bit as well.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, the shifting of gender kind of definitely comes into not just doesn't just happen in between the stories, but there's the shifting of gender happens in some of the traditional in one of the traditional stories in particular. So it's very much in there in the tradition. It felt like a very natural thing to do.
It's a book I haven't read, but I have seen Sally Potter's film with Swinton in it, and I would really recommend that to anyone who hasn't.
Absolutely.
It's a fantastic performance. And I love this idea that there's these traditions and traditional songs, and I think you've always done this, that are lesser known and are almost overshadowed by the castles and the tartan and the thing. And to do a show on the Royal Mile, which is the main street of that stuff, is absolutely perfect.
Well, yeah, it does feel really perfect. It is. I really wanted this show to be an antithesis to Tart and Tat. You were asking about the sort of staging of the show. It's very simple. So, well, the reason I started talking about Orlando in that thing there is that because the character moves and shifts so much, none of the staging could be too specific. And so I just wanted a really simple kind of atmosphere to be set, and I've made this. I've just made a large background image, which was a piece of heather that I found. Oh, actually, you can see it in my Zoom.
Yeah, I can see it. I did catch my eye. Yeah.
So yeah, there's this really gnarly piece of heather that I picked, and I took some up close photographs of it. Anyway, I've put it into negative and sort of glitched it a little bit, and it's feels a far cry from the Bonnie Blooming Heather and is very kind of evocative and quite dark. And so that forms the backdrop of the show. And yeah, this show is meant to be a kind of antithesis to Tart and Tat. So.
And is there a kind of narrative that runs through it? Obviously, there does in the book. So is that right? You know, are you taking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's So yeah, we follow the character of Scotia from a young boy. So kind of so the character of Scotia ages in the story, and yeah. So I used the stories that that I knew I wanted to tell,
Right. Yeah.
and kind of pulled them together in a way that would form this narrative of this character changing for and moving through time. So we start, the first story is The Fairy Boy of Leith, and it's a story of that is written as an account in some books from the late 1600s, from a sea captain that is introduced to a young boy in Leith, and is told that this boy is a fairy boy, and it depends how you want to read it, as to whether the boy lets the captain know his secrets, or whether, because he's being so interrogated and is quite sharp and bright, just kind of decides to go along with this idea and goes, okay, well, if you say I'm a fairy, then here's a story for you. You know, it's like the account can very much come across in that way too. So I find this really perfect children's rhyme that goes along with it, or that I've made go along with it. But it says, gin you call me imp or elf, I read you look weel to yourself, gin you call me fairy, I'll work you muckle tarry. Gin good neighbour you call me, then good neighbour I will be, and gin you call me silly wicht, I'll be your friend good day at baith day and nicht. So what the children's rhyme is essentially saying is, well, however you treat me, then I will be. And you know, if you call me a fairy, then I'll be impish towards you, and if you call me a good neighbour, then I'll be nice to you, and that's always how I've sort of felt about this story, that the accusatory nature of it kind of meant that the boy lent into it, but it was but also just to challenge sometimes the romanticized ideas of how we look at this, like the supernatural beliefs in Scotland. I think that there's some amazing kind of old, like, pagan ways that were forgotten and things, but also I think a lot of supernatural beliefs were also used to kind of socially persecute people and other people. I mean, witches is obviously like a really obvious one. Fairies is kind of a little bit more vague in that sense. There's like, sometimes it's portrayed as positive, but a lot of the times it was kind of negative, but always slightly fearful. And there's definitely a sense of that in this story. And so that's where that's the kind of first story that we go into, and then the character kind of moves through different songs and stories with different types of transitions. Yeah, in other ways, different songs, different and different stories. So there's some stories that I found told by kind of travellers in the School Scottish Studies archives. There's songs that I know already and just really love, and there's a couple of historical stories about Scotland and particular Scottish individuals that I really love as well, that I felt weren't your first impression, you know.
Are you constantly discovering new stories and new songs? You know, because I think the idea is that certainly the oral tradition of storytelling would often lead to variations on stories and new ones from place to place or whatever. And I'm wondering if, if you find one, then you think, oh, here's another version of that, or here's something that's similar to that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, with every project, there's usually so some of the things in here I've sort of had in my back pocket for a few years because I'll have been researching another project and I'll have kind of found this thing that I thought was like a gem, but it hasn't been right for that particular project, so I've sort of just squirreled it away. Or I'll hear like, oh, this is a different version of that story that I did know, or I'll hear this version. There's one of the stories that I learned from the archives, which I've since kind of heard that a few people have a telling of, like a few storytellers in that community have a telling of, and I've not heard anybody tell it live. So I'll be interested to see what my interpretation of it is compared to theirs. So yeah, I mean, I'm constantly just like gathering stuff because I'll use it at some point.
It's interesting that the little I've read the kind of Scottish historical fiction that's based in that world. Nearly every area seems to have a kind of version of a lot of these songs. Like for instance, my parents are from, or my mum's from the Scottish borders. And say, oh yeah, but that wasn't what we called it. That wasn't the name we had for it, and things like that. And is the songs that you are using, or at least perhaps you've got in your back catalogue, are they from all over Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, they're less likely to be from the northwest.
Right.
Sometimes just purely language wise, because I'm working in Scots language.
Yep.
So they're less likely to be from up there. But generally, there's actually that a lot of the show ended up being quite Edinburgh centric, which actually wasn't a pure intention.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of stuff in there about Edinburgh, which I'm quite enjoying.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that stray out with it, or just sort of go to a more rural place that is a little bit less defined. But there's quite a lot of specifically Edinburgh things, which I think is nice for the Fringe.
Absolutely. And have you done the show yet? Is it going to be debuted at the Fringe?
No. The 20th is the first performance.
Fantastic. I was just wondering, it'd be lovely to see how audiences react, because I've got a feeling when I speak to people about Scots language in general, again, it's something that, I mean, such a complex history, isn't it? That how it was suppressed, Scottish culture was, and therefore almost said in hushed tones. But then again, people say, oh, my gran spoke like that. That was the word that she said, and all of those things. And I think it's now got to the stage where people are really ready to celebrate the language and the stories that are told in that language.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, singing in Scots was how I learned to sing folk songs. My granny spoke in Scots all the time, and so by extension my mum as well, and so yeah, that was the sort of natural kind of familiar tongue, and becoming conscious that was what I was singing, and that was what I was passionate about. Excuse me, really came sort of as I developed my career as a singer, and also as a songwriter, especially when I was going, oh, what language do I want to write in? Because I usually sing when I'm singing traditional material. I'm usually singing in Scots.
Yeah.
And the first songwriting that I did, well, actually, the very first songwriting I did was probably some terrible stuff as a teenager at school. Trying to be more like Kurt Cobain than I was a folk singer, but it would be much more. It was being the first songs I wrote were in English, for quite a long time, well, a few years anyway, and then I started writing more in Scots, and now it can feel quite strange to write in English. because I've been doing it in Scots for quite like so many years. I really have to try and shift my mind a bit. I mean, I do still write in English as well, but yeah, I do have to have a bit of a head shift for it, which is interesting. Yeah.
And I think going back to the Scottish culture in general, this idea, because every culture, as you suggest, shifts and changes and is, you know, is adapted for different times and different places and different people. But it did seem to me, particularly in the 20th century, that Scottish culture was always had a block on it. And a lot of it was to do with the kind of tartan identity and the stuff we saw on television and the songs we heard on, you know, that induced cringe in many people, including myself in there at the time. And it needed, and I think it has happened now, almost that to be kicked out the road. It's not kicked out the road, we know it isn't, but that these older ways and songs and traditions are now being celebrated once again. Because I think for a while it seemed that they weren't. I might be wrong about that. And
I think that's absolutely true from what I gather. Yeah, I think that's absolutely, yeah, I think that's totally true. That yeah, there was definitely that cultural cringe that has happened, and I think that definitely there's been huge progress since then, and undoubtedly the way to avoid that is for Scottish people to know about their traditions and that they have access to them and that they feel a sense of ownership over them. And so having Scottish traditions and the knowledge of that in schools and in sort of learning programs like Fish and the Edinburgh Youth Gathering and things like that is so valuable. So that even if, you know, somebody doesn't become a folk singer, that, well, maybe they've got a party piece, you know, and that it's just, and that kind of thing feels it, as long it should just feel normal, you know, not kitsch.
And I think even if they do, as you say, if they don't become a folk singer, they will tell stories, and those stories, you know, are constantly being updated and changed, but you know, through generations.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, as you mentioned, you're in Edinburgh for the Fringe. Is there other things that you're looking forward to? Have you had a chance to? Do you enjoy being a local person in Edinburgh during August? Do you enjoy it?
I really do. Yeah, I think I understand the frustration for a lot of basically if you're working in the middle of town during the Fringe, then it's a lot. It's a sensory overload. And yeah, I did work on the Royal Mile for many years, or just off the Royal Mile for many years in a record shop, and yeah, doing the post run that went right down the Royal Mile was a lot. But you know, if you're going into town because the Fringe is on, I mean, it's lovely to have so many people here and so many people from different places, and to have all kinds of places becoming kind of pop-up bars and venues and things. It would be really nice to see some of those smaller venues stay for the rest of the year. But yeah, during the Fringe, it is really lovely to just feel that atmosphere.
And as I say, have you had a chance to look at the program and see if there's anything you're looking forward to?
Yeah, there's so many things. I mean, just even within the Scottish Storytelling Centre, there's a load of things that I'd really like to see. Mary Campbell's doing all three of her so, I can't remember what the actual trilogies. Pendulum Trilogy, it's called. So she's got three separate shows. There's an Irish storyteller, Claire Murphy, who I haven't seen before, but her show sounds really good and sort of not dissimilar lines of inquiry to mine in terms of the stories that you might not have heard, kind of things. But hers is kind of Irish Celtic traditions. So yeah, that looks really interesting, and Yeah, there's Dougie Mackay and Jemima Hughes have a really interesting looking show that involves shadow puppets at the Storytelling Centre. There's just there's loads just within that venue.
Actually, I mean, that's a good bit of advice, because I think to some people the full Fringe programme is a bit overwhelming. If you want
Yeah.
to just be guaranteed some quality shows, look at the Scottish Storytelling Centre's programme and you'll find
Mm,
lots there.
yeah, absolutely. There's a really great program this year, and then there's out with the Storytelling Centre, there's so much going on, and
I
it's
love it. I
great.
mean, I only visit obviously through from Glasgow, but I do love it at this time of year. It's amazing. And before we go, we should remind people once again where they can see you and when.
Yes, come and see me perform Scotland Unsung at the Scottish Storytelling Centre, the 20th to the 24th of August. 5 performances. That's the Wednesday to the Sunday, and it's 12 till 1 p.m. every day in those 5 days.
Kirsty, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and all the very best with the show when it starts.
Thanks very much.
And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.